The NHL trade deadline has come and went. There'll be no more trades for the New York Islanders until the offseason. But before it ended, the New York Islanders made one last sneaky trade, a trade that we're going to be talking about on this episode of Islanders Digest. And this trade can definitely have some serious implications for the roster down the road as the Islanders try to make a playoff push. That's right, as the Islanders try to make a playoff push, because even though the Islanders sold, they did not sell all their assets, and they're definitely going to be trying to push for the playoffs as the season continues, and this trade can definitely help them down the line. We're going to be talking about all that on this episode of Islanders Digest, but before we do, be sure to subscribe to the channel, be one of our first 100 subscribers. If you're an Islander fan and you want more Islanders content, this is the channel for you. Now, I really was not expecting the Islanders to make any trades after the Nelson trade, especially when they made it really clear that they were going to keep Kyle Palmieri, but at the last second, Lamoriello pulled one last trade. He traded Dennis Cholowski to the New Jersey Devils for Adam Beckman. Now, at first, this does not seem like a really interesting trade. Dennis Cholowski has played some games for the New York Islanders, has played some meaningful minutes, but at this point, he was definitely not going to play another game for the New York Islanders, and he probably was not going to be brought back next season. I mean, at this point, the Islanders already have 9 defensemen on the roster. A lot of fans were complaining online that they wanted to see a defenseman traded. This is probably not the defenseman that they wanted to see traded, but at the end of the day, the Islanders did trade a defenseman, and they got something worth noting in return in Adam Beckman, and that is something I do want to start this video talking about, who the Islanders got in return, because this is definitely a player who can be interesting down the road. Now, typically when you see these trades with players who are mostly in the AHL, they really are not that interesting, but with Beckman, I think we have a really interesting case. Beckman was drafted in the 3rd round in 2019. He is currently 23 years old, and at points, he has shown some flashes of really good hockey. At one point, in fact, at the beginning of this season, he was ranked as high as 11 on the Devils prospect board, which isn't too high, but it's definitely worth noting. An 11th best prospect in a team is definitely a player who can make impacts, and he has played in the NHL before. If you look, he's played a couple seasons in the Minnesota Wild. In fact, on the Minnesota Wild, he was actually considered a really interesting prospect at one point in the WHL. He had an incredible season, scoring at 107 points in 63 games. That is absolutely insane production in the WHL. And in the AHL, he has also seen some success, which definitely makes him an interesting player for the Islanders to pick up. In the past few seasons, just looking back, this season, he scored 33 points in the AHL, 33 points last year in the AHL, so some pretty decent production. He's actually picking up his pace each season where he plays in the AHL. This season, he's on pace for more points than he had last season. He's also played some NHL games. If you look, he's had 3 stints in the NHL, all with the Minnesota Wild. The first one, he played 3 games, only had 1 assist. Second time, he played 9 games, didn't have any assists. I will note in both these stints he was a negative. And then the third time, he played 11 games and ended up getting 2 assists. He was a -2. Honestly, not terrible from a plus-minus standpoint. Could be worse, but he really has yet to stick with an NHL roster. That being said, while he was in Minnesota before he moved to the Devils, this was a prospect that the Minnesota Wild were talking about trying to give more time to figure out in the NHL. They definitely thought he had some potential in the NHL, which is why they gave him 3 stints before sending him down 3 times. I wonder with a team like the New York Islanders that might have a little more patience, if this is a player who can find their groove in the NHL. Again, putting up 33 points in the AHL in 43 games is solid production. He is only 23 years old. Maybe this is a late blooming player, a player who can actually provide value for the Islanders down the stretch. And as we're going to get to talk about as we talk about the Islanders roster now, there definitely are going to be opportunities for him to make the Islanders roster. I don't think he's going to start in the NHL, but he definitely can make the Islanders roster as they try to push for the playoffs. And that's definitely going to be something to keep an eye on. Now, in return, the Devils got Dennis Cholowski, and this is a really interesting trade for me, especially for the Devils. I don't really know what the Devils are thinking here. After losing Jack Hughes, the Devils made a ton of depth moves today, and a lot of them did not really seem to address the fact that Jack Hughes is not coming back this season. And this is definitely one of those trades. Now, when you look at the NHL numbers, you might actually think that the Islanders lost this trade, losing Dennis Cholowski. Looking at Dennis Cholowski's stats this year, he played 33 games in the NHL as a defenseman, scored 10 points, 3 goals, and from that point of view, you might say this player is a player that was pretty effective for the Islanders. Some Islander fans seem to really like Dennis Cholowski because of the production he showed in 33 games. I really disagree with those fans. I have nothing against Dennis Cholowski, but if you really watch him play defense for the New York Islanders this season, there's a reason why they acquired 3 extra defensemen and sent him back to the AHL. Dennis Cholowski was struggling for the Islanders to the point where they sent him down on waivers. Before they sent him down in his last few games, he was playing around 4 minutes per game. Towards the end, the only time he was playing for the Islanders was on the power play, and while he did have some limited success on the Islanders power play, mainly because he was smart enough to simplify things and just shoot the puck on net, never going to dig a guy for shooting the puck on net, but if you really watch his games, he did have a couple lucky goals that got tipped in, or, deflections where he got an assist. Not that it's bad for defense. Again, putting the puck on net is good for a defenseman, but this is a player who really struggled, especially on defense. Even with Patrick Waugh giving him limited minutes, he still really struggled to earn any sort of trust on the Islanders when it was not an offensive zone play, and especially with the defensemen the Islanders have in the lineup right now, as we're going to take a look, they really did not have need for Dennis Cholowski. So at the end of the day, getting rid of a player like Dennis Cholowski and getting back a player that they can use down the line is definitely beneficial for the New York Islanders, especially considering a little while back, the Islanders put Dennis Cholowski on waivers. So getting Beckman back, a player that they can use in the lineup potentially down the road, is a great thing for the Islanders. It can definitely make a difference as the Islanders really try to push for the playoffs, as we're going to talk about in the end of this video. Because, as you can see, the Islanders have 9 defensemen on their NHL roster right now. Now, this is no longer a problem because as the trade deadline has ended, the salary cap still matters. The 23-man roster limit no longer matters for the NHL. Now, so long as the team is cap compliant, and due to the Islanders trading Nelson, they will be cap compliant. They don't have to worry about holding on to all these defensemen. And Pelech, Dobson, Romanov, D'Angelo, Mayfield, Pollock, Riley Boquist, Peronovich, all 9 of them are better defensemen than Cholowski. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised the Devils did not try to trade for one of these guys. Maybe the idea is to keep Cholowski in the AHL until they need him, because he has already passed through waivers. That could be the idea the Devils had. Not really sure what they're looking for, but definitely the Islanders, I think, got a return that they can use. Now, going a little more into the Islanders, I definitely think, even though I do think this player, I do think Beckman can have an impact in the NHL this season. Stefan Roser has said that he will be, at least he believes he will go right to Bridgeport, which makes sense. I definitely don't think he has a chance to start on the Islanders roster, but if we look at the roster, this is definitely a lineup that he can break into. The Islanders, as we know, do not have the best Bridgeport system, so first of all, just adding a player who is playing well in the AHL can really help Bridgeport improve, because right now, it is not the greatest place for prospects who develop, so adding any scoring to the Islanders' Bridgeport team can kind of help things settle out down there. But if you really look at the Islanders' 4th line, I know Gatcomb has really earned his place on the Islanders, but the Islanders don't really have any players in Bridgeport if anyone gets injured. Matt Martin is still available, but at this point, I don't think Lou Lamoriello and Patrick Waugh view Matt Martin as an NHL option anymore. It's sad. I love Matt Martin, but I think he is done playing in the NHL. He's still practicing with the team. He's still around. I don't think he's going to be getting any more playing time. So if somebody gets injured or if Fasching does start to struggle, I can definitely see the Islanders putting Beckman into the lineup to try to inject some skill. Again, this is a highly skilled player, someone who's put up 104 points in the OHL. He's also put up 33 points in the AHL. He's a player who can score. He has yet to do it in the NHL, but maybe given an opportunity, if a roster spot opens up on the Islanders, he can do that. And I can definitely see that happening going down the stretch. And we'll see what happens going down the stretch. As I alluded, we're going to talk a little bit about the Islanders. Looking back at the roster, the Islanders did not trade everyone, so they are definitely going to try to make their best effort at making the playoffs. They are only 4 points out at this point in time. They do have to jump a few teams, but several of the teams they do have to jump did not have the best trade deadline. The Boston Bruins have basically sold their entire team away. The Islanders are going to be able to easily hop past them. And then from there, got Montreal, who does look pretty good, but the Islanders can definitely outplay Montreal, especially with their veteran leadership. Then you got the Detroit Red Wings, who are definitely struggling down the stretch, and the New York Rangers. So we'll see what happens. Also, Ottawa Senators definitely made some interesting moves in the deadline. We'll see if it helps them or kind of messes up their team chemistry. Islanders season is not over. Even though they sold Brock Nelson, this is a team that definitely can still compete, and we'll see if Beckman can be a part of that down the stretch for the New York Islanders. This battle is about to get very physical. It's going to get very intense. Players are likely going to be missing games here and there, and I definitely think he might be the guy stepping in if the Islanders do have any injuries. With that being said, let me know what you think about this trade down in the comments. Do you like this trade for Beckman, or would you rather have Dennis Cholowski in the AHL? I'd love to know your thoughts. Be sure to leave them in the comments. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and as always, let's go Islanders.